Turtles are great for people of all ages, but kids especially love turtles. Going out into nature and seeing your first salamander or tadpole or turtle is kind of what gets us all excited about nature, and that's kind of how most of us kind of got into appreciating nature, is seeing animals like that when we were young. Turtles are one of the groups of species that even on a global scale seem to be quite impacted in terms of the percentage of all species worldwide that are vulnerable to decline. And two of those that are state threatened are our freshwater turtles, a Blanding's turtle and a wood turtle. For the last several decades, the Minnesota DNR has been working with wood turtles. We know wood turtles are indicators of quality of rivers. They need rivers that don't have a lot of siltation. They need well-oxygenated rivers in terms of places to overwinter. We know if wood turtles are declining, that there is something going on in the landscape to be causing that. The northeastern part of the state, where the forest system is a little more intact, they still have low numbers, but they're doing a little bit better. In the southern part of the state, we're mostly seeing older adults. So we're not really finding juveniles. There's a lot fewer turtles. And they seem to be impacted a lot by agricultural activities, by flooding events, potentially from tiling, putting more input of water into the rivers. And then a lot of predators are digging up nests of the few turtles that are still left to nest. We have been deploying transmitters on turtles down here in the south for about 4 seasons now to better understand their movements. We're trying to understand how the turtles maybe are changing their behavior and their habitat use based on how the landscape had changed. And then that spiraled into a partnership with the Minnesota Zoo, where we were allowed that extra help to be able to look at more sites and have more staff time to be able to better understand habitat use at both private landowner sites as well as some public sites.
We came across a turtle in need who had to be brought back for medical treatment, and that turtle was ready to lay some eggs. So the zoo stepped in and we were able to incubate the eggs at that time, had some really good success. We know that with the eggs themselves, that up to 90–95% will be taken by predators. So the egg stage is certainly the most vulnerable. Once they hatch out, they're still very vulnerable. It's probably not more than 10 or 20% that will kind of make it even through that first year. Most of the wood turtles in Minnesota will lay their eggs in early to mid-June, and that's when we go out in the field and collect them from the wild. And we bring them back here to the Minnesota Zoo in our incubators, and they take roughly 50 to 60 days for them to go through their development and to start to hatch out. So we're just at that stage now, reaching kind of end of July, early August is when we have most of them start to hatch. In the wild, they actually take a little bit longer because they don't have the steady temperature and humidity that we do here. We keep them around 80–82 degrees and about 80% humidity. A day or two before they hatch, they'll start to sweat, so they'll push out that excess moisture, and that clues us into that we're about to have some eggs hatch here at the zoo. But when they first come out, they have this little white mark that helps to cut the shell, and they'll kind of poke and let the fluid come out for that first day or so. They'll kind of just poke their head out and wait and kind of keep absorbing their yolk inside, and then the second day is when they get the strength to finish pushing all the way out. And after a few days, once they've absorbed that yolk sac, we'll move them down into our larger rearing containers downstairs. So we want to make sure that we have a whole dry kind of land area and mimic as much as we can what they might experience in the wild. So we want to have, plants and shelter that they can hide under, obviously a water component as well. Lots of rocks like you'd find along a riverbed. Hello, babies. Hello, there you all are. So we'll have individual little nail polish dots on everybody and keep track that they're growing and healthy. Last year we had 20 turtles. This year we'll have 30 that we're going to rear up. Wood turtle hatchlings look a little bit different from the adults. As they get older, they will get more coloration on their heads and legs. They turn kind of a yellow and orange on their necks and legs. They actually look fairly red out in the eastern part of their range. And their shell also becomes more kind of pitted and marked. It looks almost like wood in a cross-section. That's one of the ways that they have their wood turtle name. It looks kind of like a woody woody shell makeup. But these guys are pretty drab, which is good early on. They want to blend right into their surroundings. They're obviously very vulnerable. Raccoons, birds, skunks, foxes, you name it, would love to feast on turtle eggs and hatchling turtles. So it just gives a better chance to get past that most vulnerable stage and release them, that year later. And that just helps to boost the population. So the population is facing a number of threats: habitat loss, climate change, road mortality. So this is just buying us some time to keep the populations going as we address those other problems. So we want to individually mark all of our turtles before release. So we do little drill hole marks, and they are done in a certain pattern that they have an individual number associated with that. So each individual turtle has an individual mark, and that enables us to identify them again in the future. And they're all a little bit different in size, and that just kind of goes by who eats better at the beginning, really. Some, just like with kids, some are a little bit pickier in what they will eat, and we give them a pretty good range in their diet.
We know this particular site provides all aspects of the life history that a turtle needs. It provides the great river habitat for it to overwinter. It provides all of this foraging habitat. After we just had this recent rain, there's going to be a lot of insects like grubs and worms that have now made their way to the surface and will provide a lot of food resources for both adult and young turtles. And it has some backwater areas. And those backwater areas are important because the turtles, if they're released in the strong current of the main river, especially after a rain, can get flushed downstream. There's also not any really roads right nearby where they're going to be hit having to cross. We know there is nesting habitat nearby because that's where we protected the eggs and bringing them back to the site. So we know all aspects of their life history are provided at the site. We typically start doing surveys along the river. We will either walk into a site with landowner permission, or we'll go by boat and get out and walk places that we either historically know turtles have been or look good in terms of foraging habitat or basking habitat. And once we locate a site that has turtles, then we'll contact the landowners, explain to them that we found rare turtles on or near their property, and ask permission if they will allow us to survey on their property. We also have telemetry turtles, and they're allowing us to come into their land about once a week and track the turtles, better understand the habitat that they're using, and then we go back and work with those landowners to try to protect that habitat. So we have 4 different sites that each have about six to 8 turtles with transmitters on, and both Minnesota DNR as well as the Minnesota Zoo are working on weekly tracking at each of these sites to learn more information about their habitat use. We're learning more about their nesting sites, their nesting needs. So some turtles, especially in the Northeast where the river system is more intact, they're mostly nesting on more natural sites like cut banks on the river systems. What we're finding here in the South is they're mostly nesting in fields, and that can put them at odds with agricultural practices. We are actually working to try to do some protection of nest sites. So any eggs that we are finding, nests that we're finding that we are not taking to the Minnesota Zoo for head starts, we're protecting those nests with hardware cloth and making sure that predators can't dig them up.
So there's a few things that you can do to help turtles. One is to not litter, and if you see litter, to pick it up, especially in areas along rivers, campsites, lakes. What litter does, it will attract raccoons and other small predators that love to feed on turtles and turtle eggs.
We certainly recommend, if you see a turtle in a road where it's safe to do so, move it to the other side of the road in the direction it's going, but otherwise leave it be. Don't take it home. It doesn't make a good pet. We can love them where we see them. They're wild animals that need to be left in the wild.
Well, you can think of them as the janitors of our wetlands. So wood turtles and other turtles, they are consuming a lot of dead and dying plants and animals that would otherwise build up and spread disease in our aquatic systems. So if we have a lot of turtles, we're going to have healthy, clean water for Minnesota. They're just a wonderful ambassador for conservation. So you can go out into any of our state parks, other wildlands, you can see turtles, you can get up close. Kids love finding them. They're just a great animal to have around.
Funding for this program was provided by the Minnesota Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund, Safe Basements of Minnesota, your basement waterproofing and foundation repair specialist since 1990. Peace of mind is a safe basement. Live Wide Open. The more people know about West Central Minnesota, the more reasons they have to live here. More at livewideopen.com. Western Minnesota Prairie Waters, where peace, relaxation, and opportunities await.